It started with a reservation I hadn't made. My 60th birthday, a Tuesday. San Diego, the waterfront. A restaurant Claire said she had heard good things about. There was something in her voice when she mentioned it. Not excitement, not affection. Logistics. That's what I'd become to her. A calendar note, an obligation. She told me we were going out, not asked. She said we, but I knew it wasn't just her and me. I wore a clean button-down and a blazer that didn't quite fit anymore. I remember fumbling with the collar in the bathroom mirror, not because I cared about looking good for anyone, but because a man turning 60 wants to look like he still has choices, even if no one around him lets him make any. The restaurant was one of those polished places that forgets its own soul, minimalist, expensive, the kind of place that tried too hard to feel effortless. A plate of food came out looking like a painting and tasted like a suggestion. The kind of place Ryan liked. They were already at the table when I arrived. Claire, Ryan, his girlfriend, and a few others I didn't recognize. Ryan's high school friend Adam, maybe, and a girl with bleached hair who looked bored even before the menus arrived. Surprise, Claire said, standing up to kiss my cheek. But it wasn't a surprise. I had seen the reservation on her phone the week before. I just hadn't said anything. I'd already learned what happened when I said things. The table was set for 8. I recognized none of the effort. Not my music. Not my food. Not my company. I was the guest of honor at a party that wasn't for me. I sat down anyway. Ryan didn't even look up from his phone. Just gave me that side smile, the kind a teenager gives a stranger holding a door open too long. Claire poured me a glass of red and passed the bread, as if that was supposed to count for int asterisk Macy. They talked about things I wasn't invited into, apartment renovations, some overpriced DJ playing downtown who was dating who now. I ate quietly, smiled when I was supposed to, said thank you when the waiter brought my plate. That was my role. Polite, silent, self-erasing. There was a time Ryan used to ask me things. Homework help, advice on fixing a garbage disposal. Things a young man asks another man when he hasn't yet decided to hate him. That time was long gone. Now, every question he asked was a trap dressed in kindness. Every compliment held a blade in its teeth. It wasn't a birthday. It was a performance. And I knew the script. After the first bottle of wine was gone, Ryan stood. I saw it coming before he opened his mouth. That grin. That rehearsed looseness. He raised his glass like he was toasting at a wedding, except the groom was me, and the bride was already looking at someone else. To Tom, he said, 60 years and still kicking. A few laughs. Still manageable. He turned, locked eyes with me, and still hogging the prime real estate. Downtown apartment, top floor. Best view in Chicago, wasted on a man who's home by 6 and asleep by 9. No offense. He paused, took a sip, waited for the tension to settle. Claire glanced down at her plate. I gave a small laugh, hollow. Expected. Ryan kept going. I mean, it's time, right? Guys your age belong in places with ramps and nurses, not skyline views. Come on, be honest. When's the last time you used the balcony for something other than watering your one sad plant? Another laugh, this time louder. From Adam or maybe the girl. It didn't matter. They were laughing at the old man at the end of the table. Not with him. Ryan held out his hand, palm open. Come on. Let's make it official. Hand over the keys. It's time. I looked at his hand, then at Claire. She didn't say a word. She didn't flinch. She didn't reach across the table and tell him to stop, to respect me, to cut the crap on my birthday of all nights. She sipped her wine. A long, thoughtful sip, like someone watching rain on a window, not a man being stripped of his dignity in public. That silence broke something I hadn't realized was still whole. Because I knew then, this wasn't Ryan being spontaneous. This wasn't a dumb joke made too loud after too much wine. They'd talked about it. Without me. Planned it. Laughed about it. Probably while I was sleeping in the next room. He thought I'd hand the keys over. He thought I was too old, too passive, too soft to say no. They all did. The apartment in Chicago was mine. Bought it after my first divorce when I was still trying to prove I was more than a mistake. Paid off the mortgage early. Spent weekends refinishing the wood floors myself. It had become a place no one visited anymore. Not Claire, not Ryan. But they spoke about it like it was already his. Like I was just a placeholder warming the space until he was ready to inherit it. I smiled. Everyone laughed. Even the waiter, awkwardly, as he set down a cake I hadn't asked for. Chocolate mousse. I hate chocolate mousse. Claire leaned in. It's just a joke, she whispered, touching my arm. But there was nothing in her touch. No warmth. No correction. Just confirmation. She wasn't on my side. She hadn't been for a long time. I looked at Ryan. His smug grin. The confidence in his posture. The way he leaned back in his chair, sure that the joke had landed, that he'd scored points with the crowd. He was playing to an audience that had already clapped. And in that moment, something inside me went still. Not angry, not hurt, just still. Because I had been a fool, provider, a banker with a pulse. I'd spent the last decade shoveling money into a furnace that never warmed me. Paid Ryan's rent once, years ago. Helped with his student loans. Bought Claire a car when hers broke down and never asked for $1 back. I had told myself I was investing in family. But all I'd bought was silence. Silence when I was disrespected. Silence when I was sidelined. Silence when I was erased. And now that silence had come home to roost. Ryan thought he could evict me from my own life with a smile and a raised glass. Claire thought she could watch it happen and still call it marriage. They were both wrong. I leaned back in my chair. Watched the candle flicker on the cake I didn't want. Listened to the laughter fade into the clink of forks on porcelain. And in that quiet moment, I made a decision. Not a dramatic one. Not one I'd announce. But a quiet, surgical shift. A breaking of something sacred, the last thread of belief that I was part of this family, that I belonged. That night, when Claire slipped into bed beside me, I didn't say anything. I didn't mention the keys. I didn't talk about the restaurant. I didn't ask her why she stayed quiet, because I already knew. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling. The sound of the waves outside the hotel window, the muffled hum of traffic, the weight of 60 years pressing down on my chest. And I thought, if they want me gone, I'll show them what gone looks like. After that night, something shifted. Not loudly, not in some explosive, cinematic way, but like a ship's rudder moving a single inch in deep water. Quiet, invisible, and yet everything begins to turn. Claire didn't mention the dinner again. Not the joke. Not Ryan's open hand demanding my keys like tribute. Not the laugh she gave that wasn't hers, brittle, rehearsed. She pretended it never happened. That was her gift. She could bury anything if it meant preserving the illusion. But I remembered. I remembered everything. 2 days later, we flew back to Chicago. Claire scrolled through her phone the whole ride home, texting friends, forwarding photos from the dinner. Photos I hadn't posed for. A slideshow of someone else's birthday. I watched the city come into view beneath us. The grid of lights, the silver of the lake, the place where I had built my life before I ever knew her name. Back home, the apartment felt unfamiliar, like someone had rearranged the walls while we were gone. I stepped inside and saw the truth that had always been there, just blurred by routine. She didn't live here anymore. Not really. There were no shoes by the door. No jacket in the closet. Her toiletries sat in a travel bag on the sink, unpacked but untouched. Her life had shifted back to her house in Evanston months ago, under the excuse of helping Ryan while he's in between jobs. But Ryan had been in between for 3 years. I went to the balcony, my balcony, and looked out at the skyline. This view had saved me once. After my first marriage imploded, I spent nights out there just watching the lights. They didn't blink. They didn't betray. They didn't ask me to become something I wasn't. I remember thinking, if I can afford to live in a place that sees the whole city, then I'm not finished yet. I held on to that. Until now. I stood there in the wind, holding a scotch, and I began to remember details. Not big things. Small ones. Claire asking where I stored the deed to the apartment. Said she was organizing our finances. Ryan calling me out of the blue a month ago asking if I'd be home during the weekend. He said he wanted to show the place to a friend who's thinking of buying downtown. I said sure. I even left the key under the mat. He never told me if his friend liked it. But now I understood why. He'd been preparing. Slowly. Confidently. Building a future on my past. Claire started leaving papers around. Things she wanted me to look over. They were always about beneficiaries. Joint accounts. Life insurance. I just want to make sure we're protected, she said one night, slipping a manila envelope onto my desk like a gift. Protected. From what? From me? That's when I started moving slowly the same way they had. I contacted my attorney. Quietly. I told him to review the deed, to make sure no one else had access. He assured me everything was clean. Still in my name. Still mine. Next, I visited the bank. Changed the passwords. Moved funds into new accounts. I didn't drain anything, that would have been too loud. I just rerouted the streams. Closed the joint savings. Stopped the auto deposit for Ryan's car insurance. Froze the supplemental card Claire used for household expenses. I left her primary intact, for now. I wasn't ready to make noise. I changed the locks. Upgraded the system. Installed a new keypad on the apartment door, one that needed a code instead of a key. A temporary inconvenience, I told her. She nodded absently, barely listening. I started packing in ways that didn't look like packing. Took books off the shelves. Cleaned out drawers. Donated half my closet. Stopped ordering groceries. Bought a safe. And every night, Claire texted from Evanston. Sometimes a heart emoji. Sometimes a photo of their dog. Not mine, never mine, curled on the couch. Once she sent a picture of a floor plan. Said it looked just like your place. Don't you think? Didn't. It was cleaner. Emptier. Stripped of personality. I didn't reply. 2 weeks after my birthday, Ryan called again. Hey, he said, tone chipper. Just checking. Are you around Saturday? Might swing by and crash. Got some stuff to do in the area. I said sure. Hung up. Smiled. Saturday came. I left early. Not just out of the apartment, out of the city. By the time the sun rose, I was already past Milwaukee. I had a hotel booked in Green Bay, a quiet room with no plans. I turned off my phone by noon. Let the silence sit. Because I knew what was happening in Chicago. Ryan would arrive with someone, maybe a girlfriend, maybe a manila folder. He'd walk up to the door, code in hand, confident. He'd try to open it. It wouldn't budge. He'd try again. Then check his phone. Then call me. He wouldn't get through. Then he'd call Claire. She'd call me. Voicemail. Then the texts would come. Hey, did you change the lock? Are you okay? Ryan's at the apartment. Says the door's not working. What's going on? Tom. But I wasn't there. I was drinking bitter hotel coffee and watching the rain streak down a window that didn't overlook anything important. And I felt peace. Not joy, not satisfaction. Just quiet. The kind you get when a long, slow war is finally over. When I turned my phone back on Sunday evening, the missed calls stacked like bricks. Claire. Ryan. Even Adam, the friend from dinner. 17 voicemails. 53 texts. One from Claire read, "You could have just told us." But I had. I told them every day with my silence. I told them by showing up year after year only to be asked to step aside. I told them by not reacting when Ryan dismissed me in front of his friends. I told them when I let Claire move back in with her son under the excuse of helping. Even though I knew it was just distance by design. They didn't listen. Now they would. When I returned to Chicago, the building staff greeted me differently. Ryan had apparently tried to come in through the garage. Tried his old key fob. It blinked red. He argued with the doorman. Claimed to be expected. Security had to escort him out. I nodded. Thanked them. Went upstairs. Inside, everything was untouched. Except now the silence was mine. No echo of footsteps that didn't belong. No scent of someone else's cologne clinging to a coat that wasn't mine. No borrowed presents. Just space. Honest, unshared space. That night, Claire called. Not angry. Not crying. Wounded. "You didn't have to do it like this," she said. I didn't respond. You made Ryan feel humiliated. Still, I said nothing. Then, it was just a joke. He didn't mean it. I looked at the window. The skyline blinked back at me. Thousands of lives. None of them mine. I know he didn't mean it, I said finally. That's the problem. He didn't mean to hurt me. He just did. Because it's normal now. Because it doesn't matter anymore. She went quiet. He was just being stupid, she said softly. He's young. You're not. There it was again. Old. Replaceable. An obstacle. I said, the apartment is mine, Claire. You know that, right? A pause. Yes, she said. Good. I hung up. I stood in the dark after that. Let the silence settle like dust. Let the anger recede. Because it wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. I had given them everything: time, money, patience, presence. I had swallowed disrespect like medicine, hoping it would one day heal something broken between us. But there was no between. There was only them and me. And now that separation was honest. They had made a plan without me. Now I was making one without them. Ryan came back the following Friday. He didn't text this time. Didn't call ahead. He thought silence was a language only he could speak. I watched from the security feed as he walked up to the door, casual, overconfident. Gray hoodie, coffee in hand, duffel bag slung over one shoulder like a soldier returning to base. He looked at the keypad the way you look at a vending machine: input code, receive reward. 4 digits. He pressed them slowly, waiting for the tone. It blinked red. He frowned. Tried again. Red. No sound. No click. No entry. He looked up at the camera. Smiled. Then he rang the bell. I didn't answer. He rang again. 3 times. Then silence. I sat in the kitchen, coffee gone cold in my hands. I didn't move. I wanted him to feel it. The weight of doors that don't open. The sound of your own name echoing in an empty hallway. He knocked next. Once. Twice. Then louder. Then with his fist. I let him knock until his knuckles ached. Then I spoke. Not through the door, but through the intercom. Calm. Steady. It's no longer your entry, Ryan. He stepped back like the voice came from God. Tom? What the hell, man? You don't live here. He laughed. A short, incredulous sound. Are you serious right now? I left some stuff inside. Anything inside is mine now. Come on. Don't be dramatic. Just open the door. You made it clear I don't belong, so I'm making it true for all of us. You said I could crash here. I changed the locks. That's what people do when they're not welcome. He was quiet then. His face shifted, not to shame, not yet, but to uncertainty. His grip on his own confidence was slipping. You're going to regret this, he said. I didn't answer. He stood there for another minute. I watched him consider whether he should escalate, kick the door, call someone, break something. But he didn't, because for all his bravado, Ryan wasn't a fighter. He was a taker, a leaner. He only knew how to push against doors that opened for him. This one didn't. He turned and walked away. But I knew that wasn't the end. Because Ryan didn't believe in finality. Not when things were still owed to him. That evening, Claire called. No pretense. Just straight to it. Why are you doing this? I didn't ask what she meant. She knew I wouldn't pretend anymore. You humiliated him, she said. He said you locked him out like a criminal. I stayed silent. You knew he had plans to stay there. You agreed. You said it was fine. I changed my mind. That's not fair. Neither was the toast. There was a pause. I told you. It was just a joke. No. It was a mirror. And I saw what I needed to see. She sighed. I could hear her rubbing her temples. Like she always did when she ran out of ways to spin the truth. I don't want this to become a war, she said. It isn't, I replied. It's an exit. Take it. You think cutting everyone off is noble? You think you're some martyr now? No, I said. I think I'm done being furniture in a house I built. Then I hung up. She didn't call back. But Ryan did a day later. This time his voice was thinner. less polished. Okay, he said. Let's just talk. I didn't respond. Another message came a few hours later. Just wanted to say I'm sorry for the birthday thing. Poor taste. Didn't mean it. Still, I said nothing, because I had said everything I needed to, through action, through silence. The next morning, a letter arrived from a real estate agency. Ryan had apparently started paperwork on the apartment weeks ago. Exploratory documents, pre-sale assessments. Nothing binding, just enough to start the wheels turning. He hadn't told me. He hadn't even told Claire, I think. But he'd told them he was managing the transition. Managing. They sent me a confirmation letter, addressed to Ryan but delivered to me by mistake. It included language like inheritance expectations and family asset reallocation. I sat with it in my hands, the words bleeding into each other. He had already planned to take what was mine before I was gone, and he didn't even have the decency to wait until I was dead. Claire's voice echoed in my mind. It was just a joke, but jokes don't come with notarized documents. That afternoon, I met with a lawyer. We reviewed the deed. Clean, untouched. I gave him new instructions. Consolidate assets, lock the will, assign all real property to a trust under my control. No beneficiaries. No line of succession. Just a statement. Let them build their own. He nodded. Professional. Unmoved. I wondered how many men had sat in front of him like this, betrayed, tired, cold. When I left the office, I didn't feel victorious. I felt scraped clean. Later that week, Ryan tried again. This time, he came to Claire's house. He waited until I was there, Sunday dinner. A habit we hadn't yet broken. I arrived with a bottle of wine. Claire looked surprised I showed. I looked surprised she still had expectations. Halfway through the meal, Ryan walked in. He didn't knock, just entered. His eyes were glassy. Not drunk, just dazed. Like he didn't know whether he was still the golden son or just a boy with no keys. Can we talk? He asked. Claire looked at me. I nodded. We stepped outside. Into the driveway. The streetlights buzzed overhead, casting everything in orange. He spoke first. I get it. I was an ass. I said nothing. I shouldn't have said what I said at dinner. Still nothing. I was trying to be funny. He looked at me then. Really looked. Like he wanted to see if the door inside me was still open. It wasn't. I talked to Mom, he said. She says you're pulling out of everything. Is that true? It is. Why? Because you said I'm not your father. That was a truth, I said. One you finally had the guts to say out loud. He shook his head. I didn't mean it like that. No, I replied. You meant it exactly like that, which is why it's useful. It ended the guessing. He took a step closer. Come on. You've helped me all these years. You're really gonna let one night erase all that? I stared at him. Let the silence drag. Those years were built on the belief that I was building a family, I said. You tore that belief down. You don't get to stand in the ruins and ask for a roof. His mouth opened, then closed. He didn't have a reply. I turned to go back inside. He stopped me with one last sentence. You're punishing me. I looked over my shoulder. No, I said. I'm releasing myself. That night, Claire didn't speak to me. She cleared plates in silence, wiped the counters like they'd said something offensive. When I got home, there were no new messages, just stillness. The next week, Ryan tried the apartment again, this time with a locksmith. Building security called me. I filed a report, told them to treat any future attempt as trespassing. The guard whistled low through his teeth. Family? He asked. Used to be, I replied. A week later, I left Chicago, sold the apartment, quietly, didn't list it, just handed it over to a private buyer, cash deal. No sign in the window, no notice. By the time they noticed, it was already gone. Claire called that night, her voice trembling. You sold it? Yes. You didn't even tell me. I didn't know I had to. But it's... She started, then stopped. Ryan's going to be devastated. I imagine he will, I said. She paused. He was counting on that place. I know. Another silence. You're different lately, she said. Colder. No, I said. Just quieter. I ended the call. Then I packed. Left the keys on the counter. Moved into a small loft in Boston. Brick walls. Tall windows. 2 rooms. No ghosts. I bought a motorcycle. Took on consulting work again. Started waking up without dread. Every morning I'd check my phone. No missed calls. No demands. No silent expectations. Just space. I lived like I had finally been given permission to be unneeded. And that, strangely, felt like freedom. The first morning in Boston, I woke to silence. Not the kind that gnawed at me in Chicago. Not the silence of being ignored in my own home, or the silence of Claire's half-sentences hanging in the air like smoke. This was different. This silence asked nothing of me. It didn't accuse, didn't demand, didn't weigh itself against some unspoken ledger of sacrifice. It simply existed, and for the first time in years, I breathed in without feeling like I owed someone something for the air. The loft was small, a box compared to the apartment I left behind. But it was mine. Exposed brick, wide windows, creaky floors. The kind of place you buy when you're no longer interested in impressing anyone. I kept the furniture minimal. Bed, desk, chair. A coffee pot that made exactly 1 cup. Pair of boots by the door. No photos. No decorations. No shadows dressed up as memories. I told no one where I went. Not Claire. Not Ryan. Not the handful of friends who still pretended to check in. Let them wonder. Let them dial a number that no longer picked up. I didn't leave behind a note. Just a void. Something they'd feel only when they reached for me and found nothing. 2 weeks after I moved, the emails started. Claire first. Are you okay? Then again. You disappeared. Ryan is panicking. Then again. He's been calling your old number. The line's dead. Then nothing for days. And then a different tone. It's selfish to ghost people who loved you. But that was the lie, wasn't it? They hadn't loved me. They'd used me. They tolerated me. And when I finally made myself absent, they mistook it for cruelty. Claire never once asked why I left. Only why I didn't tell them. Because for her, the sin was never what was done, only what was seen. Then came the voicemail. 1 message. Short. Ryan. Voice tight, trying to sound controlled. Guess you got what you wanted. Just know you left a mess behind. And people don't forget that kind of thing. I replayed it twice. Not because it hurt, but because it confirmed everything I already knew. He still believed I owed him something. Closure, at the very least. As if after everything, after the toast, after the planned takeover of my apartment, after Claire's silence, I was still supposed to be the man who explained himself. I deleted the message. Then I blocked the number. From that day forward, I didn't hear from them again. It was almost disappointing how quickly it ended. How little resistance there was once the money stopped flowing. They had always mistaken my presence for permanence. Thought I was a constant, dependable, predictable, self-erasing. They never saw the cliff's edge until the wind was already whistling around their ankles. I started riding again. The motorcycle I bought wasn't fast. It wasn't flashy. Just dependable. Like I used to be. I'd ride out to the water at night, park near the docks, and sit with my helmet still on, watching the lights flicker over the tide. The salt air clung to everything out here. Even the wounds. One night, months later, I saw a boy sitting on the edge of the pier. Maybe 18, maybe 20. Hoodie, cigarette, shoulders hunched like he'd lost a war no one knew he was fighting. He looked at me the way Ryan used to, back when he still asked for help with math homework. Before contempt filled the air between us, I thought about walking over, asking if he needed anything. A ride, a word, something. But I didn't, because I wasn't that man anymore. And maybe I never was. There's something dangerous about being needed for too long. It tricks you into thinking that dependence is the same as love. That sacrifice guarantees a return. But it doesn't. Sometimes the more you give, the easier you are to discard. Like a well that never runs dry until one day it does. and everyone who drank from it blames the earth for going hollow. Winter came fast that year. Boston snow doesn't ask permission. Covers everything. Like forgetting. I spent my evenings reading. Not novels. Manuals. Legal documents. Tax codes. Things that reminded me of order, of cause and effect. I made a new will. Left everything to a hospice organization. Anonymous. No monuments. No graves. Just a line in a file no one would ever read unless they had a reason to. I still got the occasional email from Claire. They softened over time. First it was guilt, then nostalgia, then quietly inquiry. Do you ever miss it? No, I didn't, because there was nothing to miss. Only the idea of something that never truly existed. I had lived for years in a house where my voice was a formality, where I was called partner, but treated like a visitor, where the son I raised looked me in the eye and asked me to vanish, and thought I would do it with grace. So I vanished, but not with grace, with intent. One final message came in months later. Claire again. Ryan lost his job. He's back at home. He's struggling. He talks about you more than you'd expect. I didn't reply. What could I say? That I was proud? That I understood? That I forgave him? No, I wasn't proud. I didn't understand. And forgiveness wasn't mine to give, not anymore. That was another thing they never learned. Respect has to come before regret. Otherwise, it's just panic. Let them sit with it. Let them build a life on their own dime. Let them scrape their knees without my hands rushing in to break the fall. I had done enough. One morning, I looked through the old texts I hadn't deleted. Just the ones from that week after my birthday. The laughter, the jokes, the invitations, the silence. I archived them, didn't delete, just moved them somewhere I wouldn't see. Proof, evidence, that I had been there, that I had tried. Sometimes I still catch myself setting the table for two. Muscle memory, ghost rituals. I pour a second cup of coffee, then laugh under my breath and dump it out. The laughter is always bitter, but it's mine. All of it, the emptiness, the quiet, the scar tissue. Mine. I still hear their voices sometimes. Not in dreams. In habits. Ryan's footsteps down a hallway. Claire's laugh in the clink of a wine glass. But I don't chase them anymore. I let them drift. Like leaves down a river I'm no longer crossing. If they ever find me, truly find me, not just locate my body in some cold room decades from now, it won't be because I reached back. It'll be because they finally walked forward. And maybe they won't. Maybe they'll build a story around me. The bitter old man who disappeared, who didn't know how to forgive, who let one cruel sentence undo years of devotion. Let them. People rewrite history to make their guilt more comfortable. But I have no guilt, only clarity. And with that clarity I close this chapter. Not with fire, not with rage, just with distance. And a question. One I ask you now, whoever you are, stranger, witness, confidant. If a man gives everything and is still treated like nothing, is it wrong to stop giving? Tell me.